and welcome to my channel. In today's video I want to share with you my painting experience with alcohol inks. I got interested in painting with alcohol inks when I reviewed one of the scroller boxes which had 3 bottles of Marabou inks and 1 bottle of Marabou extender. You can find the video in my subscription box playlist. I really enjoyed playing around with the inks, so of course I bought more and also a book, which was however rather disappointing. So in February and part of March I have spent most of my painting time using alcohol inks, trying different techniques, painting surfaces and different inks. Before I share with you my various experiments, I want to share with you my tips for beginners. Tip number 1. If you are new to alcohol inks and just want to find out if there's something you want to have a go at, I suggest you invest just in a few colors. I know you can get really tempted to buy them all, but just buying a few bottles of your favorite colors or colors you can mix will give you a good idea whether it is the right medium for you. Metallic inks are also very nice and give great effects, so you might want to invest in gold, copper or silver. Alcohol inks can get very expensive, especially the popular brands such as Pinata, Marabou and Ranger. I recently discovered alcohol inks by Jackson's Art Supplies and they are great to work with and way cheaper. You can also buy small bottles of 10 ml, 30 ml and big bottles of 50 ml. You can find a review of these inks in my playlist. You will also need to invest in a bottle of rubbing alcohol. I bought mine from eBay. The alcohol is for diluting and it is also used for various techniques. Tip number 2. Other useful things you will need: paper towel, cheap brushes for painting, cups for diluting inks, a spray bottle and a bottle with a fine nozzle for the rubbing alcohol. And I find my ballpoint stylus tools also very useful for creating dots. A plastic palette is also very useful. Tip number 3. Surfaces. Surfaces for alcohol inks need to be smooth and there are several synthetic papers on the market, but these papers can get very expensive. Cheaper alternatives are smooth tiles, which you can easily wipe off if you don't like your painting, or photo paper. You can also try other smooth surfaces you have available. I could imagine that acetate works well, or any other type of plastic. Nara paper, graphics and Yupo paper are all more expensive and work differently with the ink. Most people find that the ink spreads on Yupo more and you can't wipe off mistakes without leaving stains. It's also not great when using the heat gun. However, it works well if you layer the colors and like the effects the paper produces. Nara paper is popular because you can wipe it off and it won't stain, so you can rescue your painting or start all over again. The same is true with the white graphics. Tip number 4. Safety first. Invest in gloves, a hand blower instead of using a straw, and work in a well-ventilated room. I work downstairs in our conservatory, which is unfortunately cold, and I have the window open. I also have a respiratory mask, but it's not super comfortable to wear, and with stinky inks like Marabou, I can still smell the ink through the mask. I probably need to adjust it better. If you don't like the idea of a mask, have plenty of breaks in your painting sessions and set yourself a time limit. The gloves are for preventing stains on your hands, plus alcohol inks dry out your skin. Tip number 5. Find inspiration from other alcohol ink artists. I like watching the channels by Randy H. Art and Miriam's Nature, which I added to my playlist. They have plenty of tutorials and tons of information. Tip number 6. Just play around with the inks and experiment to learn how the colors react with the paper. Every time you buy a new brand and color of ink, make sure to create a swatch. Tip number 7. Don't give up too early. Working with alcohol inks requires a lot of patience and perseverance. I found at times that I got a bit frustrated as I didn't get the results shown in the videos. However, I also noticed that the artists in the video used different paper and also a different heat source. Tip number 8. Combine inks with other media. Posca pens work great for finer details and so do alcohol markers. This is especially useful for doodling too. Tip number 9. Alcohol inks are not light fast. They fade when exposed to sunlight. This is the reason why alcohol ink artists apply 2 types of spray on their paintings. First you spray a couple of layers of Camera varnish. Once that's dry, you add a layer of Krylon UV archival gloss or satin. Both sprays have an awful smell, and it's best to do this in a well-ventilated room, for example your garage, or if you have good weather, do this outside. Tip number 10. Get a proper mount for your masterpiece before you frame it. If you frame your painting without a mount, the paint will stick to the glass and it gets ruined. This is not my experience, but I learned that from a post in the Facebook group Alcohol Ink Art Community. I started my experiments with trying to create rings using a round object. I tried several things that didn't work well. A paper cup, a plastic cup, a cookie cutter, and this jam jar upside down. Creating circles without mucking up the center proved to be rather tricky as I kept knocking the glass so it moved and the ink seeped into the middle, so I had to work very carefully. Here you can see some of my various attempts using different inks on photo paper. I use the photo paper really just for practice. You can correct things, but eventually you won't be able to get the stains off. I used Ranger Black and teakwood for this painting on photo paper. I really like how the colors changed and you can see blues and greens coming through. so I tried these two colors also on another photo paper, and then I tried them on Yupo paper, which behaves very differently. This paper stains easily. This can sometimes work very well, like with these two colors when you paint over them. When you add a drop of ink to Yupo paper, it just spreads. This is definitely a winning color combination. After watching several videos by Randy H. Art, I tried to create lines and fades with my heat tool. This takes a lot of practice to get right, so I need to spend more time with this technique. Check out Randy's channel. I've saved many of her videos in my alcohol ink playlist. Then I watched a tutorial on another channel which showed how to create abstract landscapes using a lot of blending solution rather than rubbing alcohol. This was tricky to do on my photo paper as the backgrounds produced ugly stains. But I got the idea of how to achieve such a painting. Next I tried it on Yupo paper, also not very successful as you can see. With this orange piece I just wanted to learn how to use a brush and create brush strokes. Then I tried another landscape and here I used masking fluid to mask off the line between sky and foreground. For the foreground I used blue and yellow. Once the inks were dry, I peeled off the masking fluid and filled in the gap with more yellow and blue with a brush. I actually like how this one turned out, and I will probably paint a few trees and a bird with the Posca pens. So this isn't really finished. I wanted to try out painting cats using the dry brush technique. I originally created 4 paintings on Yupo paper, but messed up one so badly that I threw it in the bin. For my first attempt I created a thin circle with masking fluid which turned out way too thin. I painted the background first with purple and blue, and some of the background seeped into the circle. I then worked on the cat with teakwood, black and white. I had problems with the color seeping into the background, as you can see with the tail and the cat's fur. For the eyes I used emerald ink, but that spread too far. However, I managed to cover that with the teakwood. The nose was painted in with an alcohol marker, and for the rest of the details and the circle I used Posca pens. After this first attempt I tried the next one, avoiding the mistakes I made in the first one. For the eyes, the lips and the nose I used an alcohol marker pen and Posca pens for the other details. For my next cat I tried it without a circle and again messed up a few times, but I still like the result. I also tried the tilting technique with these two pieces on photo paper. For these two flower paintings I painted the shapes with masking fluid first. Unfortunately the ink didn't behave, it rarely does, and spilled over and seeped into other areas. I have since painted over the lines of my red flower. Here I tried another landscape. I first thought of adding some details with a black marker, but then I decided against it and left it as it is. I wanted to paint another cat and this was quite an effort as I kept reworking the background and then the ink seeped into the fur, so I ended up reworking that. The circles I initially painted in with masking fluid didn't quite disappear, which is a bit annoying. Anyway, I think I managed to rescue this painting. Before I attempted some paintings on the black opaque graphics paper, I have tested my various inks with added white on these papers. Some beautiful color mixes came through, as you can see. I didn't want to invest in an airbrush, so I tried canned air instead. I honestly can't recommend it. It's messy, you have little control, and your hand freezes quickly. One can doesn't last very long. If I would work full time with these inks, I would probably invest in an airbrush. I will probably clean these paintings off and use them for another project. Here I tried painting some flower shapes. I noticed that it's really not that easy to wipe off mistakes, as you can still see the residue. Originally these flowers only had stems. I tried to cover up the stains and added leaves. On this one, the leaves' veins were added with alcohol ink. And on this one I used black Posca pens instead. With this painting I wanted to create some sort of night sky using a lot of gold. I love the way the Jackson poppy reacts with the white and created these two paintings. This one has also copper added to it, though not sure if I like it. I think I went a bit mad with the copper. I painted these flowers on Nara paper. It is pricier than the other papers, but it's very forgiving. It doesn't stain and you can wipe off sections with alcohol and start new. I will probably paint more flowers and I will try to paint a cat on this paper in the future. Alcohol inks are for you if you don't mind the smell of the inks, if you love playing with colors and experimenting, if you love abstract art, if you have a room you can work in safely, if you don't mind mess and cleaning up, if you like instant gratification, but also love to have the opportunity to go back and make changes to your work later. The beauty of working with alcohol inks is that you can reactivate the ink with alcohol. I really enjoyed this month of painting with alcohol inks, and I will probably create the occasional alcohol ink painting in the future. With a lot of practice and patience you can create beautiful paintings. However, because of the safety issues and the fact that I don't like working too long in the cold conservatory, I wouldn't want to work with alcohol inks every day. I think the medium works very well for abstract paintings, but it poses some serious challenges for creating representational style paintings. You certainly need a lot of practice for these and patience. And that's it for now. Got to work on my next video. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have a question, please feel free to leave a comment. And if you want to support this channel, you can do so by liking, sharing and subscribing. You can also donate to this channel via PayPal. The link is in the description. Thank you for watching. Happy painting. Until next time.